Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about cybersecurity in this era of hybrid work. In today's world, we work from anywhere at any time. So, what does this mean for cybersecurity? To discuss that, I'm joined by Chaim Mazal, Chief Information Technology Officer and SVP of Technology for Kandji. Chaim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, James. Excited to be here.
So, cybersecurity in the hybrid world, a very complicated topic because everything is going on at once. We've got endpoint security, we've got cloud computing, we've got people working from home, logging out and logging off. So, what is your sense as you look at the cybersecurity market in this world of hybrid work? What major shifts do you see happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we shifted the dynamic a lot from the local, corporate network within the office. And we said that we want to go ahead and push that out and expand it and to allow people to work anywhere in the world. And so that means being able to access, all your key software, all the key tools to make you successful in your day-to-day operations, while still being able to provide some semblance of security, to the organization itself. And so I think we hear a lot of phrases and terms used in today's industry, like zero trust and things of that nature. And we've also been, really focused on identity and access management and making sure that we can have secure protocols and certs for connections. I definitely think it's been a complex transition for a lot of companies. It's taken a lot of resources and time and effort, but I think a lot of more modern technology companies were already working in this capacity, and so some people had some very strong advantages in getting to market quick. I definitely think that there's a new slew of solutions coming to market, though, that are going to help organizations manage their assets better, whether that's their endpoints or whether that's their cloud-based assets, in order to be able to provide access and management in a effective, secure way.
I think you made a really interesting point about there were companies already working on this before the pandemic. I would think some of the larger companies, better funded companies, were already thinking we need to do more with cybersecurity, with our hybrid endpoint, et cetera. So maybe the pandemic didn't leave all businesses flat-footed, but it seems like it did leave most of them. I mean, do you think there's a sense of massive confusion now, or are companies kind of catching up?
Absolutely. I think now, 2 years plus into this, that companies are definitely catching up, but I think it was very difficult in the beginning. I think, companies, unfortunately, for the first 6 months of the pandemic, or 6 months plus, really had to scramble, really had to have all hands on deck to be able to go through that transformation process and to be able to put some secure protocols in place for companies to be able to work hybrid at all. So, there was a lot of loss of productivity initially early on because companies had no way to be able to provide, a safe, secure mechanism for people to do their day-to-day activities. So I think now that we've progressed, we've seen some interesting placement in the market as far as solutions. We've seen technology collectively come together and share models of what they're doing, how they're being successful with the industry as a whole. And I think that's gone a long way of pulling companies forward. I still think it's not perfect, though. I still think we have a long way to go. I still think there's a lot of room within the industry to go ahead and develop ways for, effectively people to be able to work from, a cafe in Vienna and, log into an office in New York City in a financial institution and have, everything, in a safe, secure fashion. So again, we're seeing different companies, some larger companies innovate in the space. There's been some significant companies like Cloudflare. We've also seen some smaller organizations, some new bastions like, Banyan with Zero Trust. So there's a lot of interesting companies that are thinking about how we're going to allow and enable remote work, with an easy, lightweight, cloud-based mechanism to make it easy for organizations to adapt if they haven't already.
Right. So say a company comes to you and they say we're lost in terms of our cybersecurity with all the work from home and all these endpoints. What advice would you give them to boost their security posture? I mean, you mentioned some models that are working. Either what are those models, or what should companies be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's number one is asset identification, being able to really identify the key resources that are needed by your organization to be successful, right? So whether that's asset management for your laptops and endpoints with a product like Kandji, right? Whether that's, identity and access management and single sign-on for internal use applications, potentially with a product like Okta. And then I think also thinking about, VPN, or maybe transitioning to a newer technology in zero trust, and thinking about potentially how you can go ahead and validate and verify authentication to your environments and to these assets and create logging and monitoring around them. And so I think there's a lot of unique things you can do with geolocation-based things for global organizations that give a lot of insight, and then also for U.S.-based organizations. I think it's still very, very advantageous to know where your users are logging in from, what activities they're taking, and being able to create a baseline of activity across your organization.
So let's talk about Kandji in particular. How is Kandji addressing the security needs of its clients? I mean, what is the Kandji advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Kandji really promotes a unique solution for Apple device management in the enterprise. And I think one of the things that we really focus on, one of our key strengths, is orchestration and automation. And so we have a very unique capability of one-touch deployment. So effectively, an IT team can say, hey, we're bringing on a new employee, and this employee might be starting in Southeast Asia, and effectively we can get them a laptop, they can have it in front of them, they can open the screen, they can log in with credentials and automatically have their profile, their configuration, everything set up for them to be successful day one. So we're really taking the idea of remote work and hybrid work, and we're making sure that we can automate it, we can make it easy for teams to be successful, and then we can audit it to make sure that we're making improvements along the way as far as teams being able to deploy. Another interesting thing is, based on business units that someone might have in an organization, whether that's finance, or technology, or product, whatever that may be, we can pre-deploy profiles to individual laptops within the organization. So by the time someone gets their computer to be able to work, they already have everything they need to be successful from day one. So it's really thinking about automating a lot of the things that we take for granted that take place on a day-to-day basis from technology teams, from IT teams, in order to make the workforce successful, but really thinking about how to support it from a remote, hybrid, and global perspective to make it easy and to be able to return ROI back to our customers.
Interesting. So the automation, in a sense, gives that employee who's onboarding a certain amount of handholding to make it easier for them.
Absolutely. And we try to provide a lot of insights about what's taking place across the fleet of assets, across the endpoints. So administrators and IT professionals and security teams can have better insight to activity that's taking place across the organization, so they can make adjustments and improve security posture.
So I think it's interesting to look at the future of cybersecurity, because companies want to be prepared ahead of time. I mean, do you think, first of all, the companies will ever win the battle against hackers, and/or what do you see for the future of cybersecurity?
Absolutely. It's definitely a difficult task at hand that we have in front of us. A game of cat and mouse, whack-a-mole, right? We solve one problem, three problems pop up. But I think we're really making some serious and significant improvements as far as proactively addressing issues at an organizational rate, which allows us to continue to improve, to get 1% better every day. So that means leveraging some of our capabilities that we're continuously building out with technology, like automation and orchestration, and really thinking about how we can identify issues early on before an adversary does, right, and proactively be able to manage and patch them. So I really think the future for cybersecurity, right, is continuing to focus and leverage automation, really to focus on machine learning and AI, really being able to create baselines across the organization, and being able to make informed decisions on how we address items before they become problematic for the organization. So I think it's going from this retroactive space to now taking all of the technological improvements that we've seen across the industry and really leverage them to being forward-thinking and to address items in a way that we didn't have the capacity to before, right? Most security teams were unfortunately understaffed. We didn't have a big slew of tools that we have now, and really being able to harness the capacity and leverage the technology is going to put us in a much better place long term.
It seems like one of the problems with cybersecurity, and I'd love to just get your opinion on this, is that the other side, the bad actors, are pretty well funded. In some cases, it's really organized crime. Sometimes it's actually a nation state. And so it's not just a 12-year-old, in his or her bedroom. It's some pretty skilled folks on the other side, which suggests to me that if those companies want to protect themselves, maybe it becomes a game of have and have not. And it's going to take some considerable resources to protect yourself against the bad actors as they keep getting better and better and better. Is it going to get ever tougher? Cybersecurity going to get ever tougher for the companies that don't have the funding for this, or are even they going to catch up as well?
No, absolutely. I think funding is necessary. I think it's been pushed to the forefront now. I think we're seeing, CISOs at the executive table. I think we're seeing large budgets being dedicated to this. I think it's on the top of CEOs' minds, knowing that this is a number one priority for the organization and maintaining customer trust is key. So I think teams have to be well funded, right? There has to be a dedicated budget. And in order to really be successful, you have to have a blended approach about how you're looking at your risk posture across an organization. So I think, unfortunately, the organizations who are going to get left behind and are going to be impacted are the ones that don't make these appropriate investments up front. Making these investments is not a guarantee for success, but from my perspective, it puts you in a substantially better place to be successful long term. And so it's a must have.
Chaim, I think you said it. It's some really interesting stuff. It's going to be a fascinating sector to follow. Thank you so much for sharing your insight today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, James.